Hello. Hope you guys are all doing well today. Happy Monday. Happy Monday, excuse me. Uh yeah, Monday vibes today. Uh First non-victory Monday that we've had this year. And that's okay. We'll get into it. This is another edition of Vinny and Ben, two college guys that have sort of an idea of what they're talking about with the 49ers. I know my team, my school doesn't have an NFL team. Yours technically has a team, but they're
I
not the
guess,
greatest.
yeah, it's
They
for
have
everyone
players.
watching who doesn't know, I cover Florida State football on a regular basis as well. I'll be there on a practice on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, things aren't going as well there. So for the 49ers to get their first loss, some people in the 49ers world are freaking out. I'm like, you guys have it great, trust me. So
Yeah.
no complaints here from me.
Yeah. We have a lot to get into. We're gonna tap into the conversation here super soon. Actually, right now. Before you do that, though, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. We'll be back on Ben's channel next week, reacting and doing this kind of thing for the Seattle game, which is by far, I think, easily the biggest game of the year so far. So let's just get right into it. Ben, I'll start with you. What were some of your reactions to the 49ers loss last night? They, came out of the gate not very strong. They were down pretty much 17-0 until that last play when they put in Trey Lance and they scored the tutty. Then they came back in the second half, scored 20 points, and then Aaron Rodgers did what Aaron Rodgers did best, and he came back and he completed the comeback. So, what were some of your overall reactions to last night's game?
Yeah, well, let's start with the first half, because we'll certainly talk a lot about that second half. But in the first half, there was a lot of frustration going on. Jimmy wasn't playing well. Obviously, I don't think he played well through three quarters. And it's not that and we talked about this before, Vinny, when we were discussing what we're going to be talking about today. That with Jimmy, people have to have certain expectations of him, and the fact that there are limitations to him, and you can't blame him for anything beyond his limitations. But when there are things within his limitations that he does continue to screw up and continues to make the same sort of mistakes over and over again, you got to be critical of him. And specifically that interception, I know that's a great play by Jair Alexander, don't get me wrong.
It was, yeah.
It's also not a great throw either. I'm not a fan of that throw. And specifically, Kittle might have been open on that throw, but like I just said with Jimmy Garoppolo, you have to be very mindful of your skill set and what your limitations are. And he just didn't look like he quite got that on that play, even though that is the perfect deep shot that you should be taking. The fact of the matter is Jimmy doesn't have the arm to do it. His timing was off the entire game. And listen, if he had thrown that with the exact right timing with Jimmy's arm strength, there's like a 5% chance he makes that throw, 10% maybe. But like I said, in reality, that's just a throw you shouldn't be making, Jimmy. And then, of course, there was the fumble, which was more towards the end of the game. But still, it's these turnover-worthy plays. And I was tweeting about this in the last hour, half hour, really. You can go check my Twitter right now if you haven't seen it. But Jimmy ranks of all starting quarterbacks in the NFL in turnover-worthy play percentage. The only guys who are ahead of him right now have a higher percentage of turnover-worthy plays are Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Davis Mills, Lamar Jackson, Jameis Winston. That's not a good group to be a part of. And that's what goes back. It goes back to this constant issue with Jimmy Garoppolo that the offense, if they can't run the ball, if they don't have the personnel to be able to run the ball like they did in last night, if they are only pretty much dressing Trey Sermon as their running back, even though, listen, other guys are dressed, but they weren't willing to play them. You got to have a more explosive passing game. You got to figure out some sort of way to get the ball deeper down the field outside the numbers. Like Swan Song's explaining here, it goes back to this problem that what does the offense do if teams keep selling out the run and are able to stop the run? Now, I think things will get better once the 49ers get some of the running backs back. Hopefully Elijah Mitchell is healthier and maybe some of those guys in that room get a little more comfortable. But if teams continue to sell out for the run and play Jimmy this way, it's going to be a long season for Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's not going to be the only game where he has 3 turnover-worthy plays. So Man, it's just yeah, like I said, the first half was tough. You trying to come back the entire time. Then, quite honestly, I think one of the plays of the game for the 49ers is that kick return from Trenton Cannon.
Yeah.
If he doesn't get them in that position to go and score, 49ers are
Yeah.
going into the half 17-0. And Vinny, I'm sure you saw me calling for Trey Lance quite a few times, but I hope the rest of the fan base would have gotten on board with that if they were down 17-0 going into halftime, because I don't know what you're supposed to do at that point. They didn't have any momentum. And really, when they did come out of the half, right, you come back, you get the immediate score because you deferred at the beginning of the game. Then they were still stagnant those next few drives. You look at the Packers got the ball, then the 49ers got the ball, then the Packers got the ball. I believe Packers got the ball. It was either a 3 and out or it was 1 or 2 series, right? And then the 49ers got the ball back immediately, and it was a 3 and out by Jimmy. So this offense was frustrating, but ultimately I'm not putting the blame on Kyle Shanahan here. Really, the only blame I give to Kyle in this game is that fourth down call. That fourth down call is, I'm sorry, is as much as we love Kyle Shanahan, Vinny, as big of fans as we are of him, there are tons of 49ers fans who only Shans, right? There's just a certain contingent of people that are in love with Kyle in a certain way. The one thing that has always bothered me about Kyle is he's still kind of an old school coach at heart. He's not quite your analytics darling. Now, he does a lot of great things, his great motion. He does all these creative offensive things, but he's not as aggressive as I would like him to be. And this isn't just this season. This goes back to the last 4 years with Kyle. He was never aggressive going for it on fourth down. I never really understood it, because you look at that 3rd and 1 call when they do bring in Trey Lance as a decoy for Kyle Juszczyk. That is a 1-yard play call. Like that is in Kyle Shanahan's play sheet when he's looking up and down.
Yeah.
He knows he needs 1 yard. That's one of the plays he's calling. Why didn't he call one of those plays on 4th and 1? That's the one that really gets to me in terms of Kyle. But then if you look at the rest of the game as the entirety, the defense folded after a while, which I think was predictable given their corner situation. I mean, that touchdown from Lenore, where he's supposed to be backing up towards the back of the end zone, covering that last quarter, that back corner of the end zone, that was a bad play by Lenore there. And there were other bad plays by him, but overall, the defense wasn't able to get any pass rush pressure. They weren't able to sell out and stop the run whatsoever. And I don't understand why they kept switching from single high to 2 high. They were, for me, and this was, we talked about this going into the game all week, really, collectively as a 49ers media group, that the 49ers need to play 2 high, and they need to keep everything in front of them, and they need to let Aaron Jones try to win the game for the Packers. They failed miserably at that. It's not even that that they had the right play calls and it was the wrong execution. It was bad execution and bad play calling. I'm sorry. D'Amico, if you're not getting pressure with 4 pass rushers, call a 5th. If you're not getting pressure with 5, call a 6th. There are ways you can create pressure in games when you're failing so miserably like the 49ers were. And that's the real coaching issue I have in this game. It's not Kyle Shanahan's coaching decisions, D'Amico Ryan's coaching decisions, in that he played this game pretty, I don't want to say vanilla, but where was the, all
it was very I felt very conservative.
Super conservative all off season, Vinny. I remember we were talking about D'Amico when he finally had his press conferences, when we finally heard from him, when we saw some of the personnel changes in training camp and preseason. We talked about how aggressive we thought he was going to be. We talked about, the alternative type of blitzes he could call, the corner blitzes, using Jaquaski Tartt, using Jimmy Ward, K'Wan Williams, and all these different ways. I really didn't see any of that last night. So for him to not change what he was doing and then just let Aaron Rodgers rip you apart with single high like they did so many times in that game, man, you really got to question D'Amico Ryan's, I don't want to say coaching ability here, but he didn't make any adjustments on the fly. And that's really where the biggest struggle was for me during this game. The defensive adjustments weren't made that needed to be made. In fact, I didn't really see many at all. I remember when Jimmy Ward knocked out Davante Adams, they were able to stop Davante Adams for like a few plays. There was a couple first downs, a couple series where it was like, oh, wow, Davante Adams isn't killing the Niners. And then like about a series or two later, he was just destroying them as usual.
And to kind of go off of your point there, I thought he made some good adjustments, not just in the sense, simply in the sense that they went from 17 points in the first half to 13 in the second half, and then on those 2 turnovers from Garoppolo, they only gave up 3 points. So those were some good things from him, and then I think LaFleur was kind of in his bag a little bit, and really taking this time to show that welcome to the NFL moment for D'Amico Ryans. I think LaFleur was really in his bag in that sense. But yeah, I think it's fair to criticize him with the front 7 in particular, because I think, and I'll get into this a little later. We'll get into this in our next topic, just to preview a little bit. Given the context of who the Packers had on the offensive and defensive lines, they should have taken advantage of that a lot more, and they didn't. And that's where I kind of have my problem. And it felt like, with the touchdown to Lenore, that was a good ball, I think. But that, like you mentioned, there was a little bit of that slip up, and in the last series of the game, that first pass was just over Fred Warner's hands. Not really not many other quarterbacks can make that throw. And then on that second, I'm a little more upset at that second one. There was literally no one within 5-10 yards around him, and you would think that you wouldn't want anyone else but Devontae Adams to be getting the ball in that situation, but yet he is the one that's getting the ball. That's what I expected too from Matt LaFleur. Just look at Devontae Adams, whatever corner is on him, I don't care. I'm throwing the ball to him, and that's what they did, and that's how they were able to be successful. So that's, given the limitations that he had at corner, I think he did a relatively good job, better job in the second half. That doesn't, excuse the fact that you gave up 30 points.
But the fact is that they're not going to be able to cover number 1 wide receivers this year, and we kind of knew that already. But this game all but
showed that. And then you look at these next 2 weeks too; they're facing two wide receiver ones on the Seahawks, and then you got DeAndre Hopkins the following week. So that's going to be another good test for him, and we'll see.
And even then, it's they play the Colts, who have a weaker receiving core, but then the next game it's Allen Robinson. So it's going to be a scary situation.
Then you still got to go up against Laviska Shenault, and later on in the year, AJ Brown and Julio Jones. You got to face the Rams. You haven't even faced the Rams.
The Bengals. You might lose to a team like the Bengals because they have Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, and you're going to have to be guarding Demo or Ambry Thomas at that point in the season with one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about the corner position a little bit more, though. Vinny, I thought it was ironic this morning seeing that trade that went down. Seeing the fact that C.J. Henderson was basically traded for a 3rd-round pick. I mean, if the 49ers had offered a 3rd, they might have just gotten him. Why the hell didn't you do that, John Lynch?
And
it goes back to this problem, Vinny, that I have with the 49ers, which they're so reliant on the trenches that they feel like, at other spots, they'll just figure it out and piece it together, and that their philosophy is, we're going to be so elite in the trenches, and that's so much more important that it's going to make everything else, so much better, so much easier. Look at this game last night. Where was the trenches last night? The defensive line couldn't do anything. Where was Nick Bosa? Where was D Ford? And then the offensive line, listen, they weren't awful by any means. They weren't really that bad, but they just Green Bay got so much more pressure than they should have. Considering the personnel that they had on both the offensive and the defensive line, it's crazy how the 49ers lost this game, in my opinion. That's where they lost the game, is in the trenches, and that's supposed to be the strongest part of this organization. So when they keep telling us, they don't need to invest as much at corner, they can get pressure or hold pressure back, and then coverage won't matter as much. Well, coverage matters against a guy like Aaron Rodgers, and when you're going to play DeAndre Hopkins, and when you're going to play DK Metcalf and Russell Wilson. So this is what we've been talking about all offseason. This isn't something surprising. And Vinny, you put it perfectly last week when we were discussing this. The 49ers aren't a Super Bowl contender, and anyone who thinks they are, I'm sorry.
I just don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair. If you look at the teams, they're not as good as the Rams. They're not as good as the Bucs. Who the Bucs lost to the Rams yesterday. Like the Arizona's, I don't know if they're a Super Bowl contender, but they're easily the second best team in the division right now. Not just on records, but just like why they're just look at them play. Like,
I mean, the only playoff game that think about it this way, Vinny. If the playoffs started, or not right now, but at the end of the season, let's say the 49ers make the playoffs and the teams that we think are going to make the playoffs in the NFC do. The only shot they have of winning a playoff game is if they play the NFC East in the first round. That's literally their only chance to win a game.
And even then, you look at each of those teams. They look at the receivers that they have.
Yeah, right? but Dallas and Washington, and I mean that division's a mess. They should probably win one of that game if they were to get that game on the schedule.
Oh, they'd struggle. They struggle against Dallas. They'd struggle against Dallas.
They would, but Dallas also has their own weaknesses. But let's get away from that. The point is that there's a Super Bowl mentality with some of the players, some of the fan base, and some within the organization, when in reality, that's just not the season the 49ers are going to have. And that's the problem I'm having right now, is that I think there are a lot of players on this team who still believe in that Super Bowl 2019 mentality. And I got to tell them, get past it.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying that for the longest time. This is not 2019. It's not. You can't just magically repeat, like, everybody's back and it's gonna be 2019 again. It's not that simple. If that was that simple,
if they want to go and lose in the Super Bowl again, great. I'm not trying to do that, though. It's this overall philosophy issue with the 49ers where they're so stuck in that mode of how magical that season felt, how emotionally invested they were, that they can't get past it. It's a mental block for them. And I think until Jimmy Garoppolo or this team crashes and fails, they're not going to get over it. And I mean, listen, if this offseason they'd cut bait with Jimmy and signed a bunch of different players, maybe the attitude's a little different in the organization, in the locker room. But the problem is that you went and re-signed everybody to one-year deals. You brought everyone back, which turned out for your cornerback room to be a mistake. So for them to have this constant attitude where they're not trying to get better, they're really just trying to repeat what they did. It's the thing. It's the sort of thing that takes down teams in the long run. I mean, look at what happened to Atlanta in the past 2 years. I'm not saying that the 49ers are going to go on quite that deep of a decline, but if you're trying to chase that Super Bowl, that thing that you didn't even win, like, what are we doing here? I think there's a lot of teams who will fall into that pitfall, and I'm starting to worry that the 49ers are going to do that themselves, and it's going to be too late because, quite honestly, this roster as it sits now should be a playoff contender, but they're not a Super Bowl contender, and that's okay. But you have to be cognizant of that. You have to be you can't be completely unaware of that. You have to be very realistic in what you're doing, and like Jason said, this is a sort of a Super Bowl ready-ish team, right? There are pieces in place, certainly. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be overtly negative. There are pieces in place to get them there. But for them to, not be willing to let go of Jimmy and just let go of this whole limitation to the offense that we're seeing, to me, it's what's holding them back right now. Now they could switch over to Trey Lance and let him start and let him get that experience. And I'm not saying it's going to look great when Trey does play. In fact, I think he's going to make a lot of rookie mistakes, but I'd rather have him make those rookie mistakes now, this part in the season, while the 49ers aren't Super Bowl contenders. If you want the 49ers to be contenders at some point in the future, if you want them to maximize their Super Bowl potential, you got to start Trey Lance sooner rather than later. You want to get him that experience, because if Jimmy Garoppolo starts the whole season, Vinny, and they go into next season with Trey just getting his first start, I think that's a mistake in my book. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
2 years.
problem
That's 2 years of
I'm
not
coming back
playing.
to.
Yeah, that's 2 years of not playing, and that's the risk of affecting his development as a player, and that's something that's really important. Getting back to the game a little bit, I think I'm with you. I don't think I'm blaming Kyle Shanahan as much.
The
I
fourth
don't
down
think
call is bad,
the fourth down that was a bad one, but I
that also
think
isn't surprising, Vinny. Like, I'm sorry to cut you
yeah,
off, but that fourth down, for him not going for it on fourth, I was never surprised by that. This offseason, I looked into how often Kyle went for it on fourth down. I believe he ranked
yeah,
in the bottom 5 every single year of the league, if not bottom 10 or 12. So
yeah,
for him to do this is not surprising, honestly.
yeah, and with we talked about the not as great first half, but
Right.
Shanahan did have a role in getting 20 points on the board in that second half. So I think that's where they don't get back into that game without him.
No.
And I think that's where you can see this switch flip a little bit. I think Grant may have mentioned it yesterday. I had a little bit of question with the personnel decisions in the sense that you suited up 3 running backs that you didn't even use. Why not at least give 2 of those guys you need 4 running backs every game? If you're only using 1, why not just have a backup just in case? And then if that backup if say both running backs get hurt, right? You have use check that you could still use, and then say in the worst case scenario, you have trailer or that use check gets hurt. Guess what? You have a number 3 pick that's a mobile quarterback that you can use in the running game. And then you have 2 corners that you signed, or one that you drafted, one that you signed that are inactive still. And you see the, injuries. Some of those guys got hurt, and you didn't have as many guys on the backup. So that's where I kind of had a bit of a problem. Otherwise, I think he did a relatively good job.
Oh, yeah.
And with Jimmy, real quick, I think I think he was all right. I don't think he was great. I still think the one throw that he got bailed out by his receivers a few times. There were some bullets that Debo, he had a few great catches. Ayuk, they had some great catches, and we'll get to Ayuk and that target spread a little later. But the throw to Sanu, where it was the bobble catch, I'm sorry, there was no one around him. I think there was some pressure that he had faced on that play, but he was wide open, and you can see every week. We talked about this before. Every week, almost at the very minimum, every series, maybe even every play, a receiver is wide open in this Kyle Shanahan offense, and he has 5 to 10 yards around him. And
just even go to the touchdown, Vinny. Let's talk about that Brandon Ayuk touchdown. If you look at the quarterback angle or the end zone angle, what happens is that Brandon Ayuk is going to be cutting across on an out to the end zone, right? And I believe it's Jair Alexander who's guarding him on this. And what actually happens is he's going to be there and he's going to beat Jair Alexander, but Jimmy threw it behind him, so he had to stop, come back, fake him out, and then go and grab the ball. And that wasn't the only time he missed in the red zone, honestly, Vinny. And that was one of the more frustrating parts about Jimmy's ball placement in this game, right? I love to talk about ball placement. That ball placement in the red zone, in particular, to the throw to Ayuk for the touchdown, but the other throw to Ayuk where he didn't score, where Trey Lance eventually scored, right? I believe it was that second and goal, right, Vinny, where Ayuk was going to run the slant, and he didn't even get the ball because Jimmy just threw it, and that was that. There's so
someone
many.
mentioned real quick. Someone mentioned in the comments too. There was the potential intentional grounding that he had that they didn't call, and they ended up scoring on. So, and then it was towards the end of that play. There was the end of the first half where they kind of got bailed out by a defensive penalty. Otherwise, it would have been how they got in the defensive in the first place. It was offsetting penalties, right? I think it was defensive illegal hands to the face, and then the other one was I think the Niners held, and
I didn't even see the illegal hands to the face. I thought
so that would have been a 10-second runoff, and then you're going into the half, and you don't have any timeouts. You can't stop the clock. You're going down in the half 17-0. So that was another thing too. I thought the refs were a little bad on
in the
both
comments
sides.
too. Let's talk about the tripping call as well. This is where you just, sorry that I cut you off. You mentioned
No,
the
you're
refs
good.
right there, right? The refs were calling this game in the 49ers' favor. I'm sorry, 49ers fans. Listen, there were bad calls in that game, but if any team was getting favored in that game, it was the 49ers. I feel like the refs almost gave them every opportunity to try and come back from this game. I mean, look at that. Let's talk about the Davante Adams hit, because we haven't. I just realized that. I'm not saying that it wasn't. How do I say this? It was a fine hit by Jimmy Ward. In fact, I don't think he should get called on that anytime, anywhere, because essentially what I saw that happen, correct me if you think I'm wrong, Vinny, is the way the angle that he was taking at Tay was that if Davante Adams had caught the ball, taken a step, he would have rammed right into the ball and it would have been incomplete. That's what Jimmy Ward was going for on that play. But because Davante Adams missed, he was trying to recoup himself, and then he moved a little bit. The way Jimmy hit him, he leveled him. And if anything, I don't think he really even hit him in the head that much on that play. If anything, I felt like Davante Adams more got the wind knocked out of him. That's what I feel like I saw, at least. Do you think I'm wrong on that one, Vinny? Or how do we feel about the Jimmy Ward call?
Yeah, I thought it was the right call. I don't think there was a flag on the play. I thought he led with his chest. He hit him in that chest area.
Yeah.
So I think it was more of a situation where he just got the wind knocked out of him.
Right.
A lot of people thought it was a concussion, and people were kind of complaining about that. Hey, concussion protocol. That was a very quick one. Maybe there wasn't a concussion at all. Maybe
honestly, but even for just getting the wind knocked out of you, that was pretty quick to come back.
No, exactly, and I think that's something to take note of. But yeah, that was a great game from him, and overall, it's just you just got to take it in stride. Ultimately, another thing too, I do not have a problem with Kyle Juszczyk scoring with that much time on the clock. Zero problem at all. I don't. I really don't. You're gonna have a hard time convincing me that, just because you're not guaranteed to score if you stop on the one, and you're up by a touchdown. It's different if you only need a field goal to win the game, right? But you needed 7 points in that span. And are you and you have 3 timeouts. I get it. But are you guaranteed? And look at the first half. It took them, they were inside 10 yards with how much time left, and it took them that long to score. And you're maybe not necessarily guaranteed that time. So I have a hard time in the viewpoint of Juszczyk in the team. It's like, okay, you're down 6. My mindset here isn't, let me catch the ball, go down, and try to save some more clock. And I get that argument. You don't want to give Aaron Rodgers that much time, but that at that point, that's on the defense. And the offense, you controlling everything that you controlled, and you got to make sure that you're scoring points as a team. I don't see a problem with them scoring in that situation with that much time. You needed points on the board, and you needed to score.
Vinny, we are we tend to agree on a lot of things. I very much disagree with you on this one, specifically with the idea that you just mentioned that they did have 3 timeouts. That's the issue, right? Is that Kyle Juszczyk is supposed to be the smartest player on the field. And listen, should the defense have given that up? Probably not. But did I expect that to happen? I expected that to exactly happen.
Yeah, and we all tweeted. And see, like everybody collectively tweeted, like, too much time. You saw the memes from.
And after the game,
I think the game's over. Yeah.
After the game, people can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, because God, there's so much going on after that game. In Kyle's press conference, I think he even said that Juice should have went down on that he should have just because the way I saw it is that Juice could have, if he had gone down right as he was getting the ball and he had the opportunity to, it would have been a first. They would have got a fresh set of downs, and they would have had the 3 timeouts. That's the issue I have with that play calling, and then, or not play calling, but that decision making, especially seeing how Kyle Shanahan, if you do give him Trey Lance in the red zone, if you give him the right red zone opportunities, he's going to make the most of those opportunities. And I would have much rather have done this, Vinny. I would have much rather kept going and not scored at all and let time run out than give Aaron Rodgers the ball back. That's just my attitude.
Okay, so then my rebuttal to that then is what happens if Juszczyk doesn't score and the team doesn't score, and
I
you
mean,
could have scored.
well, like
What happens
Juszczyk
there?
just showed you, there's too much time left on the clock. I really think no matter where you were giving the ball to Aaron Rodgers, he was going to figure it out. He showed you that to you the entire game, right? I mean, I think one of the 49ers' best players from this game might have been Mitch Wishnowsky. And his difference that he was making didn't end up mattering because Rodgers was scoring on every single one of those drives, even when they were getting it inside the 10, inside the 15, inside the 20. So I really thought no matter what, listen, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to score here. And with how bad those DBs were playing and how we saw Lenore get beat, I mean, there was the Josh Norman injury, of course, but and K1 went down, like, there was never any doubt in my mind about what was going to happen when the 49ers scored right then and there.
Yeah, I personally don't have a problem with it, but I could understand it. I get.
Yeah, well, and it's just more. I would have rather, and I can see it in the comments. Wait for rather let time run out.
That's where I think
Rodgers
it is. Like rather than you scoring the touchdown, you could score it later in the clock.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's a thing like we could have just killed a little more time in that, but I don't know. It's over now. Can't really talk about it too much anymore. Just by the way, for everyone. Go ahead.
I was going to say we're going to move on to some of our topics in a minute, but I was just going to say I appreciate everyone in the comments. I see you guys in there.
Yeah, we appreciate the comments section, being live here. We really do. We're going to keep it a little shorter today. So any questions that you have within the next, 15 30 minutes, please send them in. We'll try to get to them as much as we can. I have class because I'm still in college. So that's why we got to go a little earlier, but that's okay. So I'll start this off. A lot of blame has been put to different sections there, and it's all at the end of the day, everyone gets a little bit of the blame, right? Jimmy didn't play well enough. Kyle could have been better. D'Amico Ryans in the defense could have played better. Even Fred Warner, I thought, could have played a little bit better. Ultimately, for me, given the and we talked about this before we started, given the context of the personnel the Green Bay Packers had in the trenches, I got to put this loss on the offensive and defensive lines for the 49ers. I think I say that because I think that this could have been a game where you really could have taken advantage of it. And I think the stars on both of those sides showed up. Trent Williams, I thought he had a good game. He obviously had that blow-up block on the Trey Lance touchdown, which, I mean, he was going to do to a corner.
I just want to get out ahead of this to say I think the two highest graded players should be Mitch Wishnowsky and Trent Williams. Excellent game, honestly.
Yeah, and and looking at the defensive side, you saw Nick Bosa again. I thought he had a really good game. He got held, I think, every other play. It seemed like, and he was getting pressure to the quarterback, and he was drawing that attention from that Green Bay Packers offensive line, and he was getting some chip blocks, as they should. But everywhere else they didn't really. I thought they were a bit lack, especially with how they could have really asserted their dominance in the game. I thought Alex Mack struggled. There were a couple bad reps that he had, and
Brunskill had some bad reps as well.
Yeah, Brunskill had some bad reps too. But it's just. Yeah, I just think it's more disappointing, I guess, because they really could have established that their dominance in the game. And, another week that wasn't really much seen from the running game. Maybe that's because of the running backs. Maybe that's the play calling. But maybe that's the offensive line too, not getting those gaps and not really creating those running lanes that well. So that's where I guess I have to associate the most blame for the loss is the trenches on both sides of the ball for the 49ers.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with you on this, Vinny. I'm sorry. The fact is, and we talked about this about, 10, 15 minutes ago, this is supposed to be the strength of the 49ers. The way they've drafted this team, the way they've assembled this, the way they've divvied up their money, their positional spending. They are relying on the trenches on both sides of the ball. And that's where their strength should be. And quite honestly, that was maybe the weakest part of both sides of the ball last night. Listen, the cornerback situation, the secondary situation, it is what it is on defense, but we knew that going into the game. That wasn't a mystery. That wasn't something that we learned last night, right? So for them to not get the kind of pass rush pressure that we expect, to me, that's a failure on D'Amico Ryan's part partially. But then even that defensive line, you said you thought Nick Bosa played well. I thought he played okay, but not a single sack last night on. I mean, okay, sorry, I'm looking at the stats now. 1 sack on Aaron Rodgers, that Armstead sack. But other than that, I mean, 6 total pressures on that offensive line. What is that? That is completely unacceptable. 2 pressures from Nick Bosa. That was the most of anybody. Everyone else only had 1 each. I'm just looking over at PFF. What is, I mean, like I was saying earlier with D'Amico, if you're not able to get pressure with those 4 pass rushers, you got to find alternative ways to create and get pressure, and you have to get really just creative with it. And that's where my frustration really is with D'Amico this morning, is that lack of willingness to take risks and to do something different. It kind of just, it felt like a somewhat predictable game plan from the 49ers, and then I didn't feel like they adjusted well enough on the fly. But for the offensive line's part, I thought they played very well in those first 2 games. Honestly, I think it was the strength of the 49ers through 2 games. But they showed last night that, I guess, if they can't establish the run and they're going to be asked to pass that many times. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo had 40 attempts last night. So if they're going to be asked to pass that many times, I'm not completely 100% sold on them holding up in pass protection. And, you know, listen, Trent Williams played certainly well, but I don't feel like the right side of that offensive line played particularly well. There were some pressures, some hits, some hurries that just were unacceptable, quite honestly, especially the Mack and the Brunskill ones, like you mentioned earlier. And then there was also, that 3rd and 1 where Mack snapped the ball and literally no one else on the offense did anything, and then it's 4th down for the 49ers. Like, this is supposed to be, like I said, the strength of the 49ers. This is what they've invested, not just capital, but draft capital in. In terms of the way they've divvied up in their investments, they're riding on this being the strength of the team and the reason they win games. They're supposed to out-physical teams and bully teams. And with the Packers, even when they lost to the Packers, you could argue that the 49ers didn't get beat up by the Packers, that they didn't get out-physical by them in the last 2 years. Last night, the 49ers got out-physicaled in the trenches by the Packers, and I don't even really understand how it happened because the Packers didn't have the personnel to be able to do it. So that's, really, to me, people are going to give blame to Jimmy. I think he deserves some. I think there's some to go around for him. I think there's some, blame to go around for D'Amico. I think you can blame Kyle on that 4th and 1 call. But it really gets back to the fact that the Packers were playing with what is going to be the worst offensive line of the for them this season. It just was. And their defensive line even had injury. I mean, they didn't have Zadarius Smith last night.
There were other players too that that got hurt. One of the linebackers got hurt during the game. King didn't even make the trip, so you think they would take advantage of that, but they unfortunately weren't able to. But yeah, that's where especially like you mentioned, the investments that they put in those positions. Trent Williams being the highest paid tackle, and they didn't show up when they needed to. And maybe there was a sense of complacency again, which is a little worrying. Thinking like, hey, the Packers are a little weaker. Our home opener, we thought they did have all the momentum heading into it, but ultimately they almost got the job done, but they didn't. Ultimately matters at the end of the day.
Well, and I just wanted to touch on this, Vinny. There's going to be blame on other parts of the team, but the fact goes back to that if the 49ers are going to win games, it's going to be because of the offensive and the defensive line. That's what they built this team around. So for them not to show up on a night when they had every advantage, to me, they deserve all the blame for this loss.
Yeah. All right, next thing that we're going to be talking about, we got, maybe 1-2 more topics left. We'll talk about Jimmy G versus Trey expectations another time because I don't know when we're going to see Trey Lance start, honestly, and we got to wait till that point happens. Maybe we do a emergency episode. Maybe Kyle says, "Hey, Trey's starting. Holy crap, we got to talk about it." So maybe that's changed. But
Yeah. We could do an
one
entire hour
positive,
on that, Vinny. We could
yeah,
do an
yeah,
entire
absolutely.
hour.
One positive thing that I think we could take out of this game is the illusion that Brandon Ayuk is in this doghouse. He is no longer in the doghouse if he was ever in it in the first place. He got what was it, 7 receptions, I believe.
Oh, I'm pulling up his target share right
Yeah, he
now.
had start. I knew he's played 60 of the 70 snaps. Got a touchdown yesterday. Really looked like his former self. You know, he was returning punts, making plays in the punt game as well. And you know, you saw a lot of those targets more distributed to Kittle and to Deebo Samuel as well. And you're seeing the three-headed monster with the Yak Bros kind of come together and taking more of the heavy load in the offense. And I think that's a really good thing.
Oh, yeah.
That
Well,
Kyle
and I just
Shanahan
wanted to mention Vinny. So, real quick, Deebo Samuel, 10 targets, 5 receptions. George Kittle, 9 targets, 7 receptions. Brandon Ayuk, 6 targets, 4 catches. That's better.
That's fine. That's fine. And you can mix that out between those three, depending on who has the hot hand. And, you know, there's still going to be an emphasis on getting Deebo the ball, as they should. He's been their best playmaker so far. But yeah, I think that's a promising sign coming from this game. And yeah, you can see, yeah, what a way to think, right? Getting your good players the ball in their hands. Like, wow, what a concept, right? And then I think Trent Sherfield played like 2 snaps.
Maybe.
Maybe. And Sanu got some action into. He got a couple of catches.
Yes. So, I believe Trent Sherfield no recorded targets on the game, but yeah, you're right. Mohamed Sanu 5 targets, 3 catches. Yeah, and listen, with Ayuk, we knew this was eventually going to happen. We knew he wasn't going to be in the doghouse forever. But I mean, it looked like he was in the doghouse for the first 2 weeks, and I actually do have a problem with some of the target share from this game and the fact that, in my mind, Kittle, Deebo should be getting a minimum of 8 catches a game, and neither of them got there today. And then I hate to say they should have thrown the ball more in this game, but I don't know why Mohamed Sanu in particular got so many targets in this game. And I don't want to hate on Mohamed Sanu too much, but quite honestly, I think the target share should just be higher for other guys. So
and it's still balanced between those 3 guys.
It is balanced,
right? But I'm saying like if you were to like balance it out between like those 3 in general, because who are you going to leave one-on-one out of those guys? You can't leave any of those guys one-on-one. And then that's what makes him scary. And another thing too, I really liked how Kyle Shanahan used Kyle Juszczyk.
I love that.
I thought he had a lot of good touches too, and like that's another guy that you could add to your arsenal.
Oh my god! Well, and if Kyle Juszczyk wasn't on the 49ers right now, I think that game would have been an utter disaster, quite honestly, on offense. And you got to give a lot of credit to Juice, really, for this game that they just had. But I will say this: for what we saw from Kittle last night, that should be the minimum threshold of the amount of targets he should be getting, seriously. And the fact that they didn't get to him earlier in the season, to me, it was a mistake. I still don't understand it quite, but you just can't rely on Deebo as hard and as much as they did those first 2 games. And I think it was going to catch up with them no matter what. It'll just be interesting to see moving forward if they're able to expand the offense anymore.
Yeah.
And when I say that, it's the fact that every time you look at Jimmy Garoppolo's passing yard, it's the same thing, right? Up from 8 yards going out, he's making about every pass. Then the field narrows. And then for the next 10 yards, it's all between the hashes, not even between the numbers, between the hashes pretty much for Jimmy. So I don't know how that's going to change. Obviously, we've talked about Trey Lance a lot, but I really do worry about the long-term outlook of the receiving group and the fact that if they're going to keep getting these same targets from Jimmy, which looks like that's how things are going to go, how many of these slants can Debo and Ayuk and Kittle survive? I mean, really, it was getting scary to me last night how much they were getting hit, how much the Packers were able to anticipate what was happening. And essentially what I saw, Vinny, is that the Packers, corners, secondary, linebackers, they knew exactly what Jimmy was going to do, and they were sitting on all of his underneath routes. They were daring him to throw over him, and he didn't, except for the one time when he did, when he threw a pick, of course. So it's going to be interesting moving forward because we talk about the pass catchers all the time, but the pass catchers are so reliant on who's throwing them the ball and where they're getting the ball. And I really do have long-term concerns, or at least, long-term in terms of this season, making it to the end of the season, if this receiving group, I really think one of these guys is going to get hurt if they keep playing this way. If they keep getting these slants like they do, if they make it as aggressive at the catch point as they have, to me, you're asking for one of your receivers to get hurt. And it's not, it's not that you're asking for it. It's just that you have no other option because Jimmy is limited in the way he's limited. And unfortunately for the receivers, they're going to get the brunt of that force from that. So
yeah. And with all that too. Yeah, and with that too, I think Kittle should be the guy getting the most targets out of those three every single game. I really do. Like he's getting paid like it. Please get him the most targets. He should have the most targets. He's affecting the game the most. Out of that, you need to get your players. Your best players need to have the balls in their hands, and Kittle needs to be one of those guys that's getting
even last night. I think they should have gotten him the ball more. Quite honestly, to me, like I said, he's a mismatch.
He's a mismatch for everyone. He's too fast for linebackers. He's too big for safeties.
Well, and who was going to guard him last night? Unless the Packers decided to have Jair Alexander. Yeah, unless they decided to have Jair Alexander follow him the entire game. Like, what else were the Packers going to do? And
maybe that's where they run into the problem when playing the Rams. They'll just have Jalen Ramsey follow Kittle.
Exactly.
That's maybe the one guy that can guard him. Honestly, maybe Jair could have guarded him. We didn't know. Maybe like a guy like Marlon Humphrey. We don't know. But, I mean, we saw last year Stephon Gilmore couldn't guard him. No. So not many guys can guard Kittle. And so that's where I think they need to get him the ball more. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out heading into this week against, the biggest game of the year, easily. First divisional game of the year against the Seattle Seahawks. This is going to be our final topic. Thank you for everybody that's tuned in and that's been commenting in our comments section. As always, like, comment, subscribe. We'll be back with this next week on Ben's channel, reacting to this game.
And I just wanted to put this out there for everybody. Watch out on Twitter. I'm going to be trying to do a Twitter Spaces probably within an hour after this. So I'll put out a tweet. Look out for that, everybody.
Yeah. Definitely tune into there. I will be in class, so I can't listen to it, but that'll be okay, kind of, because I want to listen to it. But that's all right. Week 4 against Seattle. God, it feels like it's going to be the same thing from Green Bay. You don't know whether you're going to have to play with one safety or if you got to play with two. Because if you play with two, Chris Carson's going to run for 200 yards, and maybe that's the way that you have to have him beat you. Maybe that's the way you're like, okay, if Chris Carson runs for 200 yards and beats us, that's fine. Just don't get the ball. Yeah, just don't let – maybe that's the game plan. Do not let DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett go over the top. Maybe that's the way –
And quite honestly, in terms of the DK Metcalf matchup, because let's talk about this. It's going to be one of the biggest mismatches this weekend. Clearly, let's get Jimmy Ward involved more. I hate to say this, but the 49ers desperately need to get him involved more in coverage. I saw it a few times. He was involved in the slot. In the red zone in particular, they were willing to use him in some man-to-man coverage. But really, you need to get him more involved in coverage. They're so weak at the other coverage spots that – you're asking to lose games if you're going to be guarding Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf exclusively with Mosley and Lenore. You got to utilize Jimmy Ward more. Yeah. I'm sorry. And you don't want to have to do this, but because of all the injuries that the 49ers sustained, I'm sorry. You got to go to him. And then for the rest of the game plan, you mentioned it. You got to dare Seattle to just run the ball down your throat. And I think that's really the only way you can win this game. If you start getting into a shootout with Russell Wilson, yes, we've seen the Seahawks make mistakes. But if they get a big enough lead on the 49ers, I don't think the 49ers can close that gap quick enough to come back in that sort of game. And
the Seahawks,
Rodgers.
And the Seahawks stock right now I think is very low. They lost to Minnesota this past week. They kind of got embarrassed a little bit. They had 3 drives, I think, in the second half. 3. So they were just getting bullied by the run game, and I think that's what we're going to see from that defense. I think we're going to see what we saw this week, stacking the box and making Jimmy make those throws, because they do have some talented pieces still on that defense. And, we talked about, and with that too, we talked about the struggles that the 49ers have at corner. Seattle isn't much better. They have DJ Reed and they have Trey Flowers as their 2 corners. So maybe that's something that they can look at and be like, okay, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen were able to eat last week, especially with that established. And the thing that made the difference was Madison had a really good game. Maybe the 49ers look at that and be like, okay, if we just do that, that'll, we can at least tread water, and the defense just needs to make a couple big stops. But this game is going to be really, really tough. I like to predict games like right after. I can't predict this one. I don't know. Honestly, I think I got to give the edge to Seattle like today. I think
I'm not going to give a prediction, Vinny, right now, but here's what I'll say. So I was texting with my brother this morning. He's he's really into sports gambling. He loves spreads. He loves looking at books, especially at the beginning of the week. If you get Seattle right now on a alternate spread, not alternate spread. If you tease Seattle, you can get them to +9 right now. I would take that all the way. And that's the type of game I see happening, is that this game is going to be within a score or 2. And quite frankly, if the 49ers do win, I think it's going to be like an 8-point victory. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I really think this is the type of game that's going to be close pretty much no matter what happens. So I'd be willing to bet that it's going to be, like I said, that +9. I love that number in particular. That is the most enticing.
But so the Niners are 9-point underdog?
No. So the Niners are 3-point favorites, but if you tease it, you get 6 points added on, and you can get Seattle at +9, which is a number I really love for this game. I wouldn't feel confident with the points for Seattle with just the 3 or with the field goal margin for the 49ers.
Yeah.
So
that's the main thing. Yeah, that's one of the main things I'm worried about this game. Seattle's backs are to the wall right now. If they lose this game, they're worried, and it's real panic stations. I feel like some Seattle fans are already panicking right now. If they go 1-3 to start the year in this division, then it's real panic central for them. So it's a big chance. I think, just please, for the love of God, do not let him beat you over the top, because otherwise the game's gonna be over in the second quarter, just like the game in Seattle last year.
Well, and I do want to just bring up something, because I wanted to make sure I checked this before we left. You talked about the Seahawks backs being up against the wall. Their next 6 games
are brutal. They're brutal.
I just realized this, Vinny. They play 49ers, of course, Sunday. Then it's Rams
on Thursday. So they played 2 division games in 11 days.
In 5 days.
Yeah, days. But I mean, like within like a week, yeah.
Within 5 days, they're playing 2 division games. That is something else. And then they play the Steelers, the Saints, the Jags, which should be an easy game. But then they play the Packers immediately after that, and then the Cardinals, and then the Washington football team, and then the 49ers.
And then you look at the Niners' schedule those next few games. This is a game where they could really win, and not to say that they can. Just if they do win this game, that really gives them a boost heading into that Arizona game, and if they can get that out, they can go 4-1 somehow, some way. I think they'll be in a good spot if they go 3-2 into the bye week. But if they can somehow get to 4-1 heading into this bye week, looking at the schedule ahead these next few weeks, that's really where you can take advantage of that, because you got Indy, who looked terrible. And then
And
you
then
got
the Bears.
the Bears, who don't know what they're going to do with their quarterback, and I'd be
Yeah, they
pissed
might
off
play Nick
Justin Fields, to
Foles.
be honest. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh no,
But
that
yeah,
actually came out this morning, Vinny. That wasn't a joke.
no, I saw. Yeah, I
Nagy,
retweeted.
yeah.
I'm like, I retweeted that, and I said Justin Fields should request a trade.
He should.
Like, he's like, what am I doing here? You're gonna start Nick Foles over me? No. Like,
yeah.
So that's It's
Here,
so the point being, real quick, the
Yeah.
49ers can really, if they can head into the bye week with a winning record, this is where they can really take advantage of that. And, maybe that's where we see Trey Lance get more playing time. We don't know yet. Who knows at this point? But that's really where they can take advantage and, maybe not go to the division, because I think the Rams are just that much better than them, but really take advantage and, make your way to cementing a playoff spot for this team, because this, like you mentioned before, this playoff roster is still a playoff roster.
Yeah,
Super Bowl contender, maybe not. I don't think so, honestly. But you just got to get yourselves in that position, and then anything can happen at that point. So, if they split these next two games, I'll be more than happy. And even if they lose both, it's not the end of the world, but you would like it a lot better if they were 3-2 rather than if they were 2-3.
Oh, of course. But I'll say this quickly. I don't think it affects the team drastically one way or the other if they're 2-3 or 4-1 out of this bye. In the idea that we know what this team is, like you've been saying.
Yeah.
It doesn't, unless there's some significant injury or something significant happens, we know the makeup of this roster too well. So listen, is this a must-win game against Seattle? No, by no means. But it would be a great cushion for the 49ers. And the fact that if you're Jimmy Garoppolo, to me, this is one of your most important games. These next 2 weeks are probably your most important weeks, because if the 49ers are 2-3, that's when you start talking about Trey Lance a lot more seriously.
Yeah. Yep, that'll be interesting to see how it all plays out in these next few weeks. That's going to do it for us today. Thank you for everybody again that's tuned in. We really do appreciate it. Catch some of the clips on Ben's channel. His links are in the description for his Twitter and his YouTube. Follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is just right here. Subscribe to this channel. Obviously, you're looking on my channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. We really do appreciate it. And, more stuff coming from Ben and I these next few weeks. We're going to try and get some guests on, which will be a lot of fun. Just so you don't have to listen to us two young heads talk all the time and you can get all mad at us. Maybe we'll switch it up a little bit. But, yeah. Thank you, Ben, for hopping on.
Of course.
Always enjoy talking with you, man. It'll be fun, and I think I think it's gonna be a very calm week heading into the Seattle week.
Oh, yeah, not much to talk about, right?
Nothing too big, right? So,
Nah.
Yeah. Thank you guys again for everybody that tuned in. We really do appreciate it. And as always, go Niners. See ya.